Hello and welcome, or welcome back if you're one of the few people who have subscribed. Thank you, by the way, we really appreciate that. I'm Akatsuki, I'm a cosplayer, I make costumes and some creepy stuff. As you can probably tell, I really like Halloween, and this year I decided to make a ridiculous amount of costumes. Today I have for you costume number 2, a bit late, but costume number 2, Emily, the Corpse Bride, my favorite Tim Burton movie and my favorite character. I've really wanted to make this costume for many years, and this year we finally made it. So, here we go, one for you too. And this year we finally made it, so I guess let me show you how I made it. Starting from the top, we got 2 of the same blue wig, because cheap wigs usually lack hair in the back, so we're adding the wefts from one into the other. Still cheaper than one of the good wigs, but a lot more work. Then we straightened the whole thing a bit, used some hair gel to clump it together in the back, and then just pulled 2 strands from the front and tie them together in the back. The hair's pretty simple, so that's the wig. Now the veil. I wrapped some wire around the styrofoam head to know the size of the headpiece, then just used some random bits of ribbons and fake flowers to make some kind of flower crown. Curtains are usually my go-to for lots of fabric for cheap, especially the see-through kinds. So we cut up the curtain on the bias to fit up around about half the crown, then cut the bottom kind of spiderweb shaped. Since we're crafting, let's go ahead and make the bouquet as well. I followed a YouTube tutorial to make some paper flowers, painted only the parts that will be visible green, then wrapped up some leftovers from the veil and some nice blue and silver ribbons around it. And for now that's pretty much done. Now for the corset, or whatever it is. Mine's a corset, with booby cups, and no bows. Well, not in the usual places at least. I didn't have time to make a pattern, so I used an old one again. But it worked okay, because I don't change much. For this, I used my other go-to for cheap or free fabric, sheets. We need to cut the corset 2 times, because we need a lining layer. You can just use a fancier fabric and have less work, but I'm trying to use my stash and I don't have anything fancy and white. So I also cut the same corset 1 time on the leftovers of the veil, cause shiny. Then we pin it to the outside of the outer layer and sew around them so we can use them as one piece for the rest of the process. Now we start by constructing the layers separately. First the outside. We need a modesty panel for the back, sewn into the back, and just assemble it normally. We need to make some thingies to tie the corset. I don't know what they're called in English, so thingies, and sew them in place here too. I forgot to mention, but all the pieces of the outer layer have interfacing as well. Sorry. For the lining, we put everything together except the last piece of the middle back on the side with the modesty panel in it. Quick break to make some ribs. We shaved some wire, covered it in tin foil, and then went crazy with the air dry clay. Get some black to put behind it while we're at it, and mark our little hole. Then we paint our ribs to look a little bit more old and dirty. Back to sewing, we add the black hole and some booby cups to the lining. Make the actual hole on the outer layer and make sure they match. Then we can attach the two layers at the top and at one of the back parts. The other has to be sewn around the modesty panel and be left open on one side to flip it back to the outside easily. Now we have to put it on to put the ribs in place with hot glue. Use some extra layers to not burn yourself when doing this. And now for the texture, the hard part. Really, I could have used fancy fabric and this wouldn't be needed, but I just had a budget to stick to, and lace ribbon is 100 times cheaper, so we suffer. First we covered the whole front, cause I ran out halfway, with the larger and less noticeable ribbon, and then cutting apart the fancy looking one to decorate the rest. Here I've already pinned most of the little roses on the front, and now I'm gonna have to hand stitch each and every one. I'm out of pins, so I stopped here and here, and now I'm gonna sew them in place. Why is this the hard part, you ask? Well, you need patience, something I sorely lack. This took literal days, not sure how many, but at least 3 or 4 out of the 2 weeks I had to make the whole thing. It was just too long. Took longer than probably all the rest together just to make the corset. But I can say now that I have finished it. It was well worth it in the end. So many hours. But it looks gorgeous. And Emily absolutely deserves to look gorgeous. Oh, and the beads! The lovely beads on the verge of the abyss. Well, not really. They're very well held in place by a nearly invisible light blue string that you can just barely see if you look way too close. Sorry about the ear flapping noises. My little companion decided to get up and flap her ears very loudly as I was speaking. As for the skirt, we, as usual, used an old mermaid skirt of mine that's open in the front as pattern. Cut the 6 pieces out of sheets again. Cut it way longer because of the train in the back, and then just adjust to the front. We added a little bit of fabric for the closing in the front, and then just sew the parts together, right sides together as always. First the front, then the back, and then we put the two together. It liked volume a lot, so we made a bum roll. We cut 2 cloud looking pieces, big enough to go around the sides and back of the waist, and 2 pieces of ribbon to tie it in the front. Sew them together with the ends of the ribbon inside the seam and leave an opening at the top to flip it over and fill it. Close the top once you're happy with the volume and it's done. Better, but still not perfect, so I added some wire to the hem. Much better. Used hot glue to make the squigglies at the bottom of the skirt and on the veil. I didn't forget. We bought some cheap gloves and cut them up, and also cut up a sleeve from an old shirt to make our skelly bits. I put on the sleeve and the skelly glove for reference and marked it in tape where my bones needed to go, and then painted on the bones, I guess. Did the same thing for the leg as well, and that's the bone bits. I dyed an old skin suit blue in the meantime from an old costume. And finally the weathering. I took some grey, silver and blue spray paints and just gave it some color. I made a little hand too and just gave it some extra little details. Finally I just tried it on without the makeup obviously, because I was in a hurry and I just wanted to see if it looked okay. For a proper reveal, you're just gonna have to wait a little longer and subscribe. See ya!